We are now live. This is MC4326. This is one of our social media shows. Today we're going to be talking about selfies and digital traces. I'm really excited to be here with Katie and this wonderful team. Would you like to say hello, Katie?
Hello, everyone.
Hello, Katie. So we have a wonderful team here today. This is our first time going on LinkedIn Live this semester. It actually looks like we are also streaming on X as well. So if you are interested in playing around with commenting on one platform or another, feel free. So we should be, maybe Katie can confirm, but we should be live right now on X as well as LinkedIn. We're really excited to be here. This is part of our roving social media shows. We started our semester on the audio spaces on X, and then we moved to Instagram Live, and now we are very excited to be streaming cross-platform through a third-party developer on X as well as on LinkedIn. It's our first time on LinkedIn. Yeah, I'll say it's not our first show. No, we're well into our shows. It's just our first time on this particular platform. One of our commenters said, first, no, we've already gone. Yeah, we've had plenty of great shows this semester. Today, we're going to be talking about selfies and digital traces. I'd like to introduce you to this wonderful team who I know has been working so hard on this show. And it's just an all-around outstanding team. It has been such a pleasure to watch this semester. We have Wes. Do you want to give a wave as I say your name, maybe? Daniel, who's just been so wonderful. Owen and Pierce and Wilfred. We're so excited to have you. I'm going to be passing the floor over to all of you, but feel free to engage us and also our wonderful class and anyone in the chat. Oh, Anderson, they're the first to be chatting and commenting. So hopefully our team here, I know it's your first time in this platform, but you can see how easy those comments do come up in this back system. But I'm very excited today because I think oftentimes there is this misconception about selfie culture that it is very frivolous, that it is done in vanity. And this particular unit is really based on the idea of questioning this idea of selfies as subversive frivolity. And if we are thinking about it from social and political angles or a collectivity kind of approach, what does that really mean and say? What is the symbolic meaning behind selfies and selfie cultures? So without further ado, I'm not sure who's going first. I left my notes at my office at Texas State, but I am excited to pass the floor over to you. Take it away, wonderful team.
Alrighty, thank you for that little intro. So I'm Owen, and I'm just going to be kicking things off. We're part of Group 5, and today we're talking about selfies and digital traces, and we're going to go into a bit of what that means, especially in today's day and age, and also just some articles and that we found, and hopefully spark some conversation within the chat with you guys. And so the article that I found, it starts with a selfie being a photograph that one has taken of oneself, typically with a smartphone or webcam, and it's been uploaded to a social media website. So that's just a brief background. And let's see, without further ado, I'm going to pass it off over to Wilfred.
Hello, guys. Thanks, Owen. I will be talking about social media news story recap from a recent event. But first, I want to ask a question. How often do you share selfies on social media, and do you consider the potential digital traces you leave behind?
Good question. I'm curious if we can give people on the comment floor a little bit of time. Katie, do you take selfies?
I used to be a big selfie taker, I would say when I was probably in middle school and junior high, but I don't post them on my social platforms. I more use them to capture moments with my family, if we're on vacation or doing, having some sort of special occasion. But I am not the type of person to necessarily post them to my own personal platforms.
Interesting. Owen, I'm curious. Do you take selfies?
Like, not necessarily seriously, but I'll take one just to send to, like, my friends or something.
So it looks like we have some great comments coming up in the chat. I'm hoping someone on this team can read them out. Make sure you read them really clearly because they might not be reading them at the same pace we are.
So I see from um, Maite, there's very rarely as I get older, and I do feel that. I'm 23, so I do feel a bit aged with each year. And let's see, don't post selfies, and I'm always thinking of my digital footprint. That's good. That's something that's been highlighted, I think, in our articles and everything, because some of our articles that you'll see we reference, they go back as far as 2013 or 14. So these selfies are still taking on lives of their own, and still being talked about in the media. um, let's see, don't take selfies that much. Digital footprint, use them to capture memories. Okay, I agree with that. I think probably same. um, yeah, mostly memory making, and maybe just for personal use to reference later. I don't mean to age anyone. I just know with, you know, being at Texas State too, there's, all the freshmen and everything. So I feel out of touch sometimes, like just even with people slightly younger. But yeah.
Hey, Owen, you could probably imagine how I feel.
No, you're keeping up. You're keeping up. Trust me. And Wilfred, do you have anything that like resonates with any of these comments?
Uh, I agree with Candace. I don't usually take selfies as much, but like sometimes here and there I post something online. Yeah. Um, I will continue with the selfie um, article that I read. Um, Let me take a selfie is a in recent years, selfies has evolved from a seemingly tribal act of self-expression to a complex cultural phenomenon. Um, the "Let Me Take Selfie" is popularized by the song "Selfie" by Chainsmokers in 2014, and it encapsulates the casualness with which individuals document themselves in the digital age. However, beneath this playful surface lies a rich terrain where the tribal becomes subversive, and a seemingly mundane act of capturing one's image carries deep implications for identity, power, and digital culture. In this context, selfies can be examined through the lenses of subversive tribality and the traces they leave in the digital landscape. Selfies as a form of digital identity and construction. At its core, the selfies is an expression of identity and allows individuals to present themselves to the world, often curating and editing the images in ways that conform to particular aesthetic and social political ideas. The rise of platforms like Instagram, Snapchat, and TikTok has made the selfies a central tool in the construction of online identities. Unlike angles and setting, people can craft identities that align with their design or aspirations. In a way, selfies subvert to traditional dynamics or representation. In the past, one image was often mediated by others, artists, photographers, and media. With the selfie, the subject becomes the author of their own representation, upending traditional notions of authorship and authority. The seemingly tribal act of taking a selfie challenges the boundaries between private and public, self and other, and authentic and stage. The result is a complex interplay between self expression and self representation. Now, another question I have is how do selfies reflect the changing nature of self expression in this digital age of media?
Can you ask that question again? And I'm going to ask that both the people who are on the comment area in LinkedIn, try to answer in the comments, but also that your team kind of have a little discussion here. So if you don't mind asking it one more time, that would be great.
Yeah. The question was, how do selfies reflect the changing nature of self-expression in this digital age of media?
I think it's interesting to see. I had previously talked about this in one of the maybe Zooms or lives, but just how selfies and selfie culture and social media culture have progressed as technology's gotten better, especially like, back when selfies were a thing 10 years ago, there might have been, some iPads that still didn't have back cameras. So that was your only option to take a photo. So I think that's interesting to know. And also, I think I've noticed also like just people's style and kind of how they curate everything. Like the background has to be good, what you're wearing, what angles you're getting. And so I think it's just become more layered and complex over time. So I think that's been interesting. Um, let's see, anyone else?
I think what's so fascinating about this is there has been a trajectory where, if we think about Instagram, the archetypal user is the influencer. And the influencer really started with this selfie culture on that platform. But that became much more professionalized and much more calibrated as time progressed, like Owen said. And I think back to like the selfie stick. Do you remember the selfie stick and all the chaos the selfie stick created when you were on holidays and people were tripping and falling trying to get pictures of, whatever that moment was. But I think because the nature of influencer culture has moved to a much more calibrated self-presentation, we're actually seeing selfie culture less. And I would say that I didn't take selfies at all until my children started saying, take my selfie with you, take my selfie with you. And so it was actually this like younger generation wanting to play with that self-identity through cameras and lenses that I started to notice that I was taking more selfies again. So I do think there's a cycle here. And certainly if I'm, being, observant, watching these sort of like 8 to 11-year-olds on the football and cheer field, they're taking pictures of themselves with their teammates and things like that. So I think it's a dynamic movement. I noticed Katie's nodding. Do you want to jump in?
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. I think that, over time, we even look at the trajectory of only 10 years. 10 years isn't really that big of a jump of time when you think about it. But I think now we're seeing selfies being used as more than just a way of self-expression. We're seeing them being used for, I think, alignment to certain things, like with digital activism. I think Group 4 last week talked a little bit about, like political influencers and kind of the digital activism that we're now seeing on these platforms. And so I think there's a really good article about the I voted selfie. And it just kind of talks about how selfies have become this interesting tool for digital activism, which I find absolutely fascinating. And I could talk about it for a long time. But I think when you use selfies, in things like that you're personalizing your alignment, whether that be with political parties or whatever that might be. But I think using selfies as a political statement is an interesting thing as well.
Yeah, definitely. And thank you for that. And also, we later on in our talk, Daniel actually is going to highlight an article that includes that. But yeah, I think it's definitely interesting, and kind of the notion that like if you didn't selfie it, it didn't happen. Like kind of just getting the proof of everything. Going into the chat, let's see. I'm seeing it's a way to convey what you're doing in the day to day. So that kind of reminds me of like currently there's like Be Real, just to take a quick snapshot, but also I have seen in my personal like circle of people, it's kind of fell off too because it can be ingenuine. People can do it 4 times if they want to, but yeah, I think it's a way of just letting others know what you're doing. I feel like the shift what a selfie looks like for older versus younger gen. They used to be goofy and fun, and now people look as good as they can. Yeah, that's kind of funny. Um, duck face mewing. That's really funny.
I think Candace's comment is particularly interesting because the whole selfie culture created these very unique poses that have become so iconic that we can even mention them, which I think is so interesting. I like Reese's comment. I feel like many people feel obligated to take a selfie whenever they're doing something cool or visiting somewhere. I don't know if I feel obligated, but there's definitely a desire and wanting to take a picture. And I do find that as a mom, I am the photographer of the family. Like that is my role. And if I don't take a selfie, I will not be in the picture is basically how this goes. And so I notice I'll have taken, 40 pictures of my family. And then all of a sudden I'll be like, I've taken none of myself. I'm going to take one or two. And so I do think it's more prevalent when we're on holidays. And I don't know how other people feel about that, but like, especially when I was younger in my 20s, early 20s, and I was traveling by myself. And this was even before like selfie culture was really cool, like trying to just like capture certain moments. I don't know how people feel. Like, do you try and capture your holidays through selfies ever?
I can jump in really quickly on this one. I actually took a backpacking trip to Glacier National Park I think it was right before the semester started, so in July. And I actually found it very difficult to not be able to have my phone, which was surprising to me because I really was finding myself reaching for it and wanting to take, like a quick selfie and pictures of me and my partner going on this hike and this week-long adventure, and I was reaching for it and I couldn't take it because my phone was dead for 5 days straight. And so I found it interesting that this urge was kind of embedded within me. I wanted to capture everything, and I felt a little bit of pressure to take a selfie, which might sound silly, but I really did.
I think that's such an interesting story and maybe links to some of that, compulsion that we feel to our self presentation on a regular basis. But I think Lexi brings up a really interesting point, and hopefully you can see that I've pinned it here. Selfies are very intimate and personal. I feel like it's easier to take a selfie with a group of people than asking someone to take a pic. I 100% agree with that. But also this statement that Lexi has made, it makes me want to ask this group this question of, and maybe even the people in the chat, feel free to jump in. Are selfies a window to digital intimacy? Like, do you feel like you can know someone better through the way they capture themselves? Maybe Owen or Pierce.
I guess I agree. I think it's like not necessarily all the time, but it is, essentially like you can see, like if I were taking a selfie right now, you could see that I have like, oh, sorry, it's mirrored, like this piece of artwork, or, like, just things that it gives you a glimpse into what I'm seeing, what I'm doing. So I definitely feel that. And like, um, I know I've followed people like celebrities and influencers, I guess, and they are very, kind of tailored, and you can kind of see like maybe they post a picture of their like avocado toast or something, and there's like a Bloom Nutrition ad subtly like in the, like just little thing. I mean, mind you, that's not a selfie, but just yeah, like I think people do purposely, and it's actually funny. There's it reminds me of this one video I uploaded a while ago to like just a friend's story or something, where it showed how many like selfies with like front flash I was taking before I actually found the one I liked. And it's just funny, like, even if it's subconscious. And what Katie was saying too, like, I think sometimes I even feel compulsions, or like I think my phone phantom vibrated in my pocket and I look, there's nothing. So just kind of being so used to that, and just even the muscle movements of having your phone by you, it kind of, is just embedded into our life at this point.
I'd like to add a little story about my wife and I. Whenever we travel, we traveled last summer. We're going to travel this summer. She likes to take selfies, basically with her and I, in these really picturesque scenes. And she is always like, "Oh no, that one's not going to work. We need to take another one." And after a while, I'm just like, because I'm not from the selfie culture. So I'm like, okay, you get 3 attempts. If you don't get in the third try, we're done.
I love that story. It made me laugh really, really hard. I like Hannah's response to this question, yes and no. You can only see so much. I think that's a really good point. You can only ever see that, front facing. Like if we were to go into Irving Goffman's dramaturgical approach, like there's that front stage, backstage. We can't see the backstage. We can only see the front stage. So you can only make certain observations about that.
Okay, I will continue with the next topic is subversive with triviality, challenges, norms, and expectations. Uh, through often dismissed as a superficial or narcissistic pursuit, selfies can be surprisingly subversive in the way they challenge social norms, gender expectations, and a very concept of authentic self. For example, selfies have become a tool of marginalized communities. Um, through selfies have served as a form of resistance to rigid beauty standards by capturing imperfect images, such as selfies that embrace natural beauty, flaws, or conventional poses. Individuals can challenge social expectations and redefine what is considered uh, beautiful, offering space for subversion and rebellion against idealized beauty standards that dominate mainstream media. Moreover, the selfies can act as a form of political protest in authoritarian regimes or oppressive contexts. Individuals may use selfies to document their experiences, raise awareness about social injustices, or mobilize others. Sharing one image in such context can be a powerful form of resistance, subverting triviality of the selfies by imbuing it with political and social significance. For example, in the protest, the Women's March or Black Lives Matters movement, selfies become a form of solidarity and activism, where individuals claim visibility in the face of oppression. With this concludes the social media story recap.
Alrighty, I'll be explaining our first article, which is "What Does the Selfie Say? Investigating a Global Phenomenon" by Teresa Simpft and Nancy Bain. And they started off by defining a selfie, and it's pretty dense, so bear with me. They define it as a selfie is a photographic object that initiates the transmission of human feeling in the form of a relationship between photographer and photographed, between image and filtering software, between viewer and viewed, etc. And a selfie is also a practice, a gesture that can send and is often intended to send different messages to different individuals, communities, and audiences. This gesture may be dampened, amplified, or modified by social media censorship, social censure, misreading of the sender's original intent, or adding additional gestures to the mix, like likes, comments, and remixes. And so basically, I think what they're saying is just that selfies are a form of expression. However, they're unique in that they exist and are created for the internet, which comes with all sorts of new problems. And while selfies represent human agency, they are shaped by non-human agents like algorithms and data infrastructures. And this article was released in 2015, and selfie was the Oxford Dictionary's word of the year in 2013. So it was a pretty fresh concept at the time. And I think the word had a more negative connotation at the time than it does now, and they like referenced the whole duck face phenomenon a lot. And general theorizing around the topic would kind of swing in extremes, and they were labeled as narcissistic and linked to mental health issues. And these views would often pathologize selfies without strong scientific evidence to back it up. And they argue that this charge of narcissism acts more as an accusation than a diagnosis, which can lead to negative consequences, as the feminist scholar points out. Once the selfie is established as connoting narcissism and vanity, it perpetuates a vicious cycle in which women are vain because they take selfies, and selfies connote vanity because women take them. And so this kind of applies to the sort of social policing of selfies and the kind of catch-22 and partaking in them. And I think the researcher's main goal with this section is just to try and destigmatize the word and show that it's kind of too broad of a concept to be viewed through such a narrow lens. And they're not saying there's no negative aspects, but they're just trying to have a more updated language to talk about the concept, and also that the sort of outdated lens can perpetuate harmful attitudes towards different groups already vulnerable to social surveillance and judgment. And so my question to the class is, how do you think the general perception of selfies has changed since this article was released in 2015? And y'all can just answer in the comments.
I think that's interesting. I hadn't really thought about it like that in terms of, you know, being a term like being a kind of mode for like surveillance of what women are doing. That was interesting. That was an interesting point. Um, yeah, since 2015, I think mostly it's just been culture and style and um, things like that that I've observed. Has anyone else observed anything like that?
I guess to answer my own question, but I think the attitude has gotten a lot more neutral towards selfies, and people have kind of just intuitively started to understand they're kind of a more broad concept.
I was going to add in something really quickly. I think this is a really great question, and it made me think of the Me Too movement, which I believe started after 2015. I think it started in like 2016, 2017 with Alyssa Milano, who's a famous actress. She kind of advocated for this movement to start. And I think it's an interesting kind of capture of how maybe women took this idea of selfies, and like you were referencing the article, how it's seen as vain and kind of rooted in vanity, and how they tried to kind of flip it on its head and encourage people to share their personal experiences in relation to the Me Too movement, and kind of use these selfies as a powerful tool in a way.
I noticed Cassie says less of a cultural phenomenon and more of an everyday occurrence. I think that's true. I think people are using them for all sorts of reasons in their everyday lives, not just because it's part of selfie culture. Alex says, I think it's been destigmatized and much more normal and accepted thing among all genders. And I think that's a really important point. And then Candace says, I think it's so much more positive. People of all demographics want to take selfies at important events or create memories. I think the critique now lies in the timing. I think there's still judgment of ideas when someone should take a selfie. I would agree with that. I think no one would bat an eye at someone taking a selfie at their graduation or at their wedding or on holidays. But I think there are certain moments when maybe it's seen as more critical. And I look forward to talking about sort of like selfies as a collective stance shortly with Daniel. Jackson says, I think they're becoming so rampant and normalized that they're beginning to die down and become less prevalent, which leads to more unique ways to utilize them. I would 100% agree with this. I think we have gone through this really interesting cycle, like selfie life cycle. And what's fascinating is actually, if I think about the time when these academic articles were largely being published in 2015, 2016 at the outset, I think selfie culture was actually already starting to be on a downturn at that time, because we really started to see the advent of selfies right around 2011. In that range, it was a really prevalent phenomenon. But I think it just goes through cycles, and there's different iterations of it. Okay, Hannah says more normalized now. And back to those, normalized for both genders. Liz Adams, common and normalized, especially with Be Real. Okay, we have to stop for a minute and talk about Be Real. It's come up twice now. So I know that Be Real became this all of a sudden surge popularity, and there were high school students using it and college and university students using it. And I have a participant in one of my research studies who was like, my entire grade is on it. Like, we do it because we're all on it. But I do feel like it was like this spasmodic moment. Like, you rarely hear about Be Real now. How many people are still using Be Real? And I wonder if that's because a similar feature has been integrated into TikTok, or because people want to share calibrated moments, or because of something else. And I'm curious if people can maybe jump into this conversation, like, what's going on with Be Real? Who's still using it? Is it still popular? Tell me more.
So one reason I have an account, yes. I don't use it every day, but part of it is actually kind of petty. It's because if you miss it by, say, like a second, it'll give you 2 minutes to post. And it'll be like, and if you do it on time, it'll give you like 5 B reels for the rest of the day or something. And then if you're like, I do it, whatever, it does front and back, and then it takes longer to post, even though I pressed send before the timer went off, then it says, like, come back tomorrow, and maybe, like, it gives you like kind of an attitude and be like, you weren't on time, and I'm like, sorry, I'm in class or like working or something. So I just, out of pettiness, I'm like, you know what, I don't need an app telling me what to do. I don't know if anyone else feels that.
I like that. Don't put me on a timer. I do have a Be Real account, and I was using it for a very short amount of time and was very frustrated by this. You have 2 minutes to post business. Okay, so Arenda says, what's Be Real? Okay, just wait. Back it up. Owen, what's Be Real?
So it's basically a social media account that, fosters this kind of like natural, no filter, just post the raw photo, and it takes a snapshot of your front camera and back camera, and yeah, you just post it to like whatever your friends are. And also, it's like interesting because some people will post it like at their desk job, and it's like, is this like, are we supposed to be seeing what's on your computer screen? Like, that's something I've noticed, but it's just kind of like a raw social media app.
There was all of this critique by academics that, here we are actually achieving authenticity. And then I kept hearing all these other stories, like from families with little kids who were still using it, or, college students who would stop what they were doing to like jump out of their car to take a picture with a road sign, or, like actually changing their everyday habits in order to accommodate like the coolest Be Real they could get in that 2-minute section. So I think I would argue that it didn't have greater authenticity, even though that was sort of like the appeal of it. Hannah says Be Real was super popular my senior year of high school, and I think it just kind of died out. I have one person on there who still posts, but that's it. Yeah, I would agree with that. Oh yeah, I can't even own that on my own realness. Me neither. Mate says I never used it, but it always seemed like a false sense of realness to me, like this forced genuineness. Yeah. So there are a handful of articles that have been published about the authenticity that people were able to generate through Be Real. And I have always thought, no, it's still calibrated authenticity at best. And I think people are very hesitant to post something that is, truly genuine or real without having given it some thought and attention. I don't know, maybe someone on this team can jump into that, Wilfred or Wes.
What was the question, like, about authenticity?
Yeah, like just because it's forcing you to take a picture in a 2-minute span and it's taking your front and back camera, are you really going to post if you're in a situation you don't want to post about? Are you going to think about what you are posting? Maybe you didn't use it, I don't know. I'm putting
Yeah,
out
they actually kind of like talk about authenticity in the article too. And basically their takeaway about authenticity and selfies is it just kind of depends on the viewer. Like, everyone has their own subjective criteria as to what counts as authentic, so it's kind of hard to come up with a perfect definition for what counts as authentic as a selfie.
I like Nate's response though. I would see people run around me to try and create a cool photo and be real time. I think that's exactly it. It's like people started to recognize that they were going to have to be cool and like cultivate a calibrated self-presentation of authenticity in a very short moment of time. And I think based on the conversations I had with people, they were even like thinking that through in their day, like, where might I be? Lexi says, I was on Be Real a couple of weeks and it felt so stressed. Yeah, this is a common sentiment, as Alyssa says.
I think similarly to trying to make it look cool, I think I have also seen frustration from friends and other people, and including myself, where they're like, okay, I was out, I was, at Barton Springs, or I was literally doing some cool stuff, whatever, and then Be Real goes off when I'm at home in my room, like it just is randomized. And I think some people didn't like that they can't do it when they're actually doing something fun or cool.
Hey,
I also think that when a bunch of people hopped on and then it did have to be pretty authentic, it got really boring to see what everyone was actually doing. So everyone was like, all right, why am I even on here?
is that why you dropped off, Owen? You had to do your Be Real?
Yeah, I had to do my Be Real quick, you guys. It's a second priority I have.
That's funny. Okay, wonderful. I think we can probably move on from Be Real. I don't remember where we were before this, but continue.
Yeah, I'll jump back in. And so in the next section, they kind of explore how the pathology-based rhetoric around selfies kind of resembles a moral panic. And as they point out, a moral panic tends to heighten when a particular media form or practice is adopted by young people, women, or people of color. And they cite this scandal, Selfiegate, which was a selfie Danish Prime Minister Helle Thorning-Schmidt took with Barack Obama and the UK Prime Minister David Cameron during Nelson Mandela's memorial service. And they compared the news coverage in the US, Denmark, and UK, arguing that one reason it resonated internationally was it raised questions about who takes selfies and under what circumstances. And more importantly, they argue Selfiegate also speaks to shifts in the social fabric that led to a man of color being president and a woman being prime minister. And so while the general consensus at the time is that selfies are narcissistic and harmful to people, they stress the urge for just more academic research to be done on the subject. And they cite examples that show the opposite effect, where marginalized groups use selfies as a form of empowerment. For example, they discuss the breastfeeding selfie, especially any alternative breastfeeding selfies like tandem or transgender breastfeeding, which implicitly challenge maternal norms. And also a study about teens in Brazil shows they use selfies to document their lives and communicate safety. And the authors argue that for marginalized users who are suffering in a relatively severe living environment, selfies are not a shallow way to show narcissism, fashion, and self-promotion and seek attention. Rather, they empower the users to exercise free speech, practice self-reflection, improve literary skills, and form strong interpersonal connections. And so I think they're just trying to reemphasize the point that there needs to be a more nuanced approach in viewing selfie culture rather than just a blanket statement that it's all rooted in narcissism. And then, so based on these examples, they raise the question, Why is it that selfies are so frequently featured in the public imagination, not as sites of control, but as places where control is lost? And one answer, they argue, is just the historical dynamic of image representation, particularly in Western art, where women have been depicted as like passive objects to be gazed upon. And this dynamic suggests women have had little control over how their bodies and identities are represented. And they also reference feminist film theorists like Laura Mulvey, who I think like came up with like the male gaze in film, and argued that traditional media, including film, often positions viewers in a voyeuristic role, passively observing the images on screen without being able to change them. But today, with the rise of selfies and online sharing, it challenges this model. And selfies, in contrast, involve active participation by the person taking the photo, who is both the creator and the subject of the image. And photography theorist Paul Frosch critiques the voyeuristic model in the context of selfies, arguing that the selfies create a gestural image that emphasizes the presence of the photographer's body rather than a detached gaze. And as Frosch puts it, not only see this here and now, but also see me showing you me. And so I think essentially they're just showing that selfies have given everyone the ability to express themselves how they want, but kind of when it's on the internet, it's up for grabs at that point. It's kind of no longer in your control after you post it to a certain extent. And we kind of already went over authenticity and how everyone has their own different criteria. And then there's a lot of like talk about empowerment regarding selfies. So they go in and try to explain the complexities of that regarding selfies. And they say celebrating all selfies as empowering makes as little sense as denigrating them all as disempowering. And so they break down that empowerment can mean different things. Like psychologically, it's understood that you feel good about yourself, whereas sociologically, it's the capacity to take action in relation to others. Here, wait, let me see a comment. I just saw a comment pop up. Could you explain voyeuristic in this context a little bit more? Like the ability to feel like they're experiencing the selfie taker's experience. I think they're more referencing like the historical ways in like film and TV that the images presented are from like generally a male perspective, and the voyeurism idea kind of comes from cinema, like you're peeking into something that you have no say in, and you're kind of like watching someone else's life unfold. And you know, women are depicted through the perspectives of men, and so social media and selfies has kind of changed that dynamic where they can present themselves how they want to be presented, if that makes sense.
I think that kind of goes back to just like what Wilfred had talked about too, and also Professor Stewart, of just like how it was kind of originated in sort of like a girly little, selfie culture back, years ago. So I can see a little bit of that.
Cool. And okay, cool. And then so the definitions of empowerment are important when discussing selfies, because someone can be psychologically empowered by sharing a photo of themselves that challenges societal norms, but that personal empowerment doesn't necessarily translate into social or political empowerment. And to quote the article, they say, I may feel psychologically empowered by feminist rhetoric but that does not stop legislators from passing laws about what I can and cannot do with my own body to ensure me equal pay. And conversely, the fact that a white person feels what she perceives as the psychologically disempowering phenomenon known as reverse racism does not mitigate her actual social power to be free from racist scrutiny while walking into the convenience store. And they also discuss the economic empowerment potential of selfies. And while we think it may only apply to like influencers and the like Kim Kardashians of the world, they say here that selfies have been used to raise awareness around economic inequities. And one example was from 2014, known as the Rubble videos, in which water-deprived residents of Gaza engaged in the ALS Ice Bucket Challenge by making videos of themselves dumping sand, rock, and military debris on themselves. And I think it's a timely example, given all like the videos we've been seeing coming out of Gaza recently. And so finally, to better understand the double-edged nature of selfie circulation online, the authors argue that people consume digital media differently than previous forms like TV or film, where we would glance and gaze. And they introduce this idea of the grab. And the grab has several layers. Firstly, being the picture taken can be grabbed and downloaded by others intentionally or through hacking and shared across networks. And as the selfies travel, they are subjected to further grabbing by algorithms and data mining. The grab can also be used as political tools to manipulate or influence public opinion. And this highlights how our digital traces of selfies can be used against their intended meaning, depending on who gets it and what their goal is. And that pretty much wraps up the article. So I will pass it along to Daniel for our next article.
I'm going to turn my mic on. Thanks, Wes. That article was pretty broad in scope. My article is less. The scope is a little bit limited, and it's about it. The article is titled "If You Didn't Take a Selfie, Did You Even Vote?" by Chelsea P. Bukowski, 2022 from Cornell University. And I'd like to start off this by asking a question. Who voted in the last election, and did you take a selfie?
While we wait for comments, I will say I did vote. I vote on campus because I'm registered in Hayes County, and they validate parking at LBJ for future reference. But I did not take a selfie because honestly, it was just like one of the, it was like a free hour I had on a weekday to early vote. So I was just like, I had to get where I was going and go do my schoolwork and stuff. But yeah, I know. So I got a sticker, so that was fun. But no, I didn't take a selfie.
Well, I got a little surprise. I was going to save it for the end, but I guess now would be an appropriate time to. So my son, it was his first. I don't know if you could see that. It was his first time voting, and in
What a great moment.
so that's me, my wife, and my son. He's a first-time voter, and he's about to deploy to the Middle East here in less than a week. So he was home on leave, and we went and voted. And I did that with my my eldest daughter, and I intend to do that with my youngest daughter once she becomes 18. So, but oh, it looks like a couple people took selfies. Candace, Liz didn't take a selfie. She did take a picture of it.
Took a picture of the sticker.
Yeah.
Like maybe that's starting to replace the I voted kind of collective, like, or maybe it's part of it. Like maybe it doesn't have to be the person in it. Who knows?
That's interesting because this article kind of touches on that a little bit. How some people would, put their whole face, and some people would just put the sticker, or just the sticker on their shirt, but so this article, it basically looked at the I voted selfies that involved stickers as a new way that people show their political involvement, mixing traditional and modern ideas of being a good citizen. So it took place in during the 2016 election. They looked at about 3 million people who posted on just Twitter between the morning of November 8th and November 9th. And what they did was they kind of filtered out using the hashtags. So they looked at specific hashtags and they would pull those down. And interesting enough, at the time, only 24% of the voting public was on Twitter. So, you could imagine, I guess, at the time, how other people would express their civic involvement. So they talk about the navigating competing citizenship models. They discuss the evolving models of citizenship, highlighting how ideas of good citizenship are shaped by political, socio-technical context. Historically, citizenship has transformed notably through progressive era reforms that emphasized informed competence. This led to a model of dutiful citizenship where participation is driven by a sense of duty and voting is central. So I got another question. Is it more important to express individuality when you take an I voted selfie, or to express unity? And I guess, individuality and unity could be interpreted different ways. So like if you align with one particular candidate or something like that, and interesting enough, this study, when you look, while we're waiting for some of the comments to come up, interesting note is that the majority of the people who took the selfies, the I voted selfies, tended to vote Democrat as opposed to Republican. I'd say by a factor of probably 4-1. So
I know this is Katie's favorite articles that we do in this class, so I'm going to let Katie answer.
Yeah, I read through this article pretty thoroughly last year, and I find it so fascinating. It talks about this idea of embodied mass communication, which basically just means the exploration of this concept of like physical presence and like selfies. And so it's interesting, and I think it's a good question. And I would argue that it's important to express both individuality and unity. I'm gonna play devil's advocate here. I personally did take an I voted selfie with the sticker, but I didn't post it. I sent it to my family. They live far away, and so we sent each other our I voted selfies. But I do think that's a really interesting question. I'm curious to see what other people in the chat say, because I'm not too sure if I can say individuality or unity.
Let's see. Jackson says both are important. Cassie, with the generation, I definitely feel a sense of unity. Eric, I would say individuality. Voting gives people a sense of empowerment. Yes, I agree. And Candace says, that's a hard question. I was super happy to post mine because it was my first time voting, but more than that, I was encouraging others to vote. and be civilly active. So I felt I had to contribute myself to the larger group. And that's interesting because this article kind of touches on that. Would you feel persuaded by somebody if they posted an I voted selfie, whether they're a friend or a celebrity or something like that, so to me, that wouldn't persuade me to vote. I'm going to vote regardless, and I encourage other people to vote as well.
I wanted to jump in here for a minute before we get to the next one. I love this quote from Candace. I remember when I got my first chance to vote, selfie culture wasn't a thing, nor were smartphones. But I did ask my parents to come with me, much like what you did, Daniel, and say, can you please take a photo of my first time voting?
Yeah.
And so it's interesting, like this whole individuality versus unity. I think I would echo what Katie said. I think there's a place and space for all. But I think, and this is just how I read the whole like I voted hashtag, is that it's more about civic engagement and trying to encourage everyone to get out and vote. And by doing it as this sort of collective mass, there are people, Daniel, like me and you, who are going to vote every chance we can. And maybe a lot of you in this room feel that way, where it's like, if I have the opportunity to express my civic rights, I'm going to do so. But not everyone is like that. And I certainly have been friends with people who are like, I don't know, it kind of depends. And so I think that sort of like citizenship and that ability to be political to help encourage civic engagement is sort of an interesting output of selfies. Now, I think the individuality comes in like a more nuanced, like here's who I support, or, that's like a whole different layer, which adds a different undertone to the majority of the stuff I've seen in this hashtag range across platforms, which is more just about get out and vote, like just do your part. It doesn't matter which way you go. I don't know if anyone wants to respond to that, but I'll definitely put Hannah's up as well.
Unity, I feel like the intention of posting the selfies is to get other people politically engaged by creating a sense of FOMO almost.
That's interesting. What do people think about that?
What's FOMO?
Fear of missing out. Like,
oh, okay.
The voting experience. Owen, what do you think?
I think it's kind of, a delicate approach, because I think like in previous years, I have like posted like a selfie with I voted, just not this year, but I think it's, based off of, I think, personal preference too. And I don't like, I know that if I say I voted for this person, you should too, or something like that, it's like, okay, well, that's not going to change anything. That's not going to change other people's vote. And also it could, change how they perceive you. And I even just saw something on LinkedIn the other day about like kind of keeping that distanced in the workplace, just because it could create, just like tension or, separation in the workplace. But yeah, I think it's, I think that's interesting. And I think maybe I was trying to appeal to like the FOMO aspect of like some of the people that I knew, or like some people that, are following me. It's like, we're young and we should, we live near campus if we're registered in Hayes, but like, go vote. It's easy to, it's never taken me more than, 20 minutes. So I think I was posting it more to just try to get it out there. And I post as well, like little helpful blurbs of like, here's what time it ends, here's the early voting dates. And
I love that
I
you
also
do that.
posted a caption that was like, LBJ will validate your parking, FYI. Just so more just like, let's all participate if we're, willing and able. Because I know some people, like someone had said they voted online and other stuff. So yeah.
I think the democratic process is important because it gives everyone a say, everyone a vote. And so I think this collective action really encourages people to feel like you can go do that, which I think is interesting. Hannah also says, I would definitely avoid posting an I voted selfie because my family has very, opposing views. And it created a doorway to unwanted conversation and arguing. As someone who comes from a very split political family, I feel you. But, I that's maybe why I come at it from we all just have a job to do. And like, it doesn't matter that you don't agree, even though we sit across the same dinner table. You need to go do what you believe, and everyone needs to go do that process. Back over to your wonderful team.
All right. To continue on with the article, they go on to talk about representing politicalized bodies. And I think we kind of touched on this. I think Katie kind of touched on this. The article explores a bodily mass communication, a concept of referring to the public physical participation in voting and political events in the late 19th century. The gatherings allowed citizens to express their political voice and foster a sense of community. Although election reforms and media coverage have reduced the visibility of these gatherings, the principles of bodily mass communication remain relevant today, especially with the rise of social media. The visibility and collective engagement seen in historic public gatherings can be applied to contemporary digital contexts such as selfies and online expression. I'd like to ask my final question, and afterwards I have a little bit more of the article, but I wanted to, what kind of ways do you think that prior to selfies, people would express their political involvement?
The only thing I can think of from my childhood is the signs, like the signs on the lawn. I think that's the only signifier. And I remember as a very young child, and in Canada, we have a lot of parties. So I remember being like very overwhelmed by all these signs. Yeah. But I can't recall any like individual or like, aside from signage, individual or collective sort of sense. I don't know what other people think.
Okay, this is kind of silly because I have only been voting since, 2019 was when I was able to vote. So it wasn't an election year for presidential, but anywho, I remember, I don't know if some people in here feel this, but if you're like 90s or 2000s kids, you might have had an elementary school or middle school like mock election, and it was like, are you voting for Cat in the Hat or are you voting for like stuff like that. That's just my like first I guess interaction with it.
I also think of the giant pins. My parents used to wear the buttons. It's kind of similar to the sticker, but I think that's a good way of kind of showing your participation and your individuality, whether that be the candidate or just, vote, go out and vote. But the button, I remember my parents wearing the button every year.
Yeah.
Sorry, Katie, was it like an I voted button, or is it like, yeah, an I vote? Oh, interesting.
It would never be the like party or candidate, but they would have this like really big I voted or go vote most of the times button.
I love it. Thank you for sharing, Daniel.
Yeah, I when I reflect back to my youth, I don't remember seeing the yard signs, but I do remember the buttons, specifically from history, like I Like Ike, when Dwight Eisenhower was running for president. I'm not old, but I remember it from history. So, but it talks about, the public gatherings such as like barbecues and parades and stuff like that, in addition to what we mentioned. So the article finally goes on to talk about embodied mass communication, contrasting with traditional bodily mass communication, where the latter involves physical gatherings. Embodied mass communication occurs through digital representation, like I voted selfies. These selfies mediate and capture the act of voting in a digital format, allowing individuals to display their political participation and create collective symbolic meaning through shared hashtags and social media feeds. Both forms of the body, both forms use the body as a symbolic resource to communicate citizenship, highlighting the importance of visibility and collective identity in political participation. And when we talk about doing our civic duty, I served on a jury one time, and I thought about taking a jury selfie. That was a joke.
That can't possibly be allowed. There are rules, right?
Yeah, I served.
You served.
Yeah.
I love that. There's some comments here. Candace, we did like a raise your hand and vote in social studies class. Oh, interesting. And then I remember my elementary school had us vote. Oh, they had you vote for actual candidates. My school was more like Owen, where it was like all made up. They tried to be as apolitical about the political process as possible.
I think it's so interesting also. It's just things I've noticed as well. There's a lot of kind of political, like, just underlying themes in like even children's TV and like movies like Zootopia and like other things where it's like foxes are dangerous and all this, and I just think it's crazy how it finds its way into media, and then viewing these things that I watched as a kid now as an adult, I'm like, wait, this is like kind of political in a sense. I just think that's a kind of interesting thing to note.
And with that, Owen, you should continue on and talk about your compelling newsworthy example.
Okay, thank you, Daniel. So the compelling newsworthy example I found was an article that is titled "The Selfie in the Age of Digital Recursion," and it's by Adam Levin, and it was posted on the Invisible Culture Journal. And this article defined the selfie, which I previously stated, as a photograph that one's taken of themselves, typically on a smartphone or webcam, and uploaded it to a social media website. And this article highlights that a particular cover of the New York Post from December of 2013, it was a selfie of a girl on the Brooklyn Bridge in New York City, and behind her, it can be seen there's a man attempting to commit suicide by jumping off the Brooklyn Bridge, and that's her selfie. And so it just kind of goes to show, and mind you, that's 2013. So again, the selfie culture was a little different back then, and also I think things that people posted back then were a little different. And the article also includes another instance of this girl in the hospital, and it's titled "Rip Grandpa Woo," and the girl is seen taking selfies with her deceased grandpa in the back on a hospital bed. And so it kind of just highlights how there's a time and place for selfies. Like Daniel had said, like the like jury duty was not a time or place necessarily, um, but we won't tell anyone. But yeah, so those were some things that I had found from the article, and then one personal, I guess. Well, here, my question I'm gonna pose to you guys is: can you think of any instances where you've seen or heard of selfies like this being posted that were, kind of insensitive or just very jarring to the public that were posted? And then while you're thinking about that, I'm gonna share a picture that is from my friend.
Oh no!
I think an example.
So what I will say is I don't know any of my friends. Like I've never seen anyone on any of my feeds post something ridiculous as a selfie. But I have read a ton of stories, and I think this actually goes to a more systemic problem of like people posting things instead of helping, or people thinking things through and just like documenting that moment. I'm curious what you all think though.
So this Okay, this is the selfie. Let me see. I wanted to get it. I apologize. I wanted to get it on here, but I don't think. This is after. Oh wait, let's see. My friend was involved. Oh,
Oh no.
involved in a like barrel roll car wreck, and then she gets out and is like this. But it was actually pretty serious. Like, but I mean, mind you, that's her. That's her trauma to you know, I guess scrapbook and get a picture of, but it at least it didn't involve like some random person. But yeah, let's see. Always thought funeral pictures are strange. I agree. Um, I think I think that's like I guess I guess I can see that in some ways, like if it's kind of insensitive, like yeah, but also I guess I don't know. Sometimes I am like, okay, I'm not gonna judge someone's grieving process, I guess. Like if it's a genuine like, their loved one with like flowers or something, it's like, okay, like yeah. But a selfie where it's like, like we can chop it up. I
It's
think
interesting because I just can't even rationalize that, but you see it so like it doesn't take a lot to go look for these, and they're done publicly often as well with different hashtags that are very searchable. Like if you wanted to go on an Instagram little search, you certainly could. I know Tama Lever has done a considerable amount of work on this idea of like a funeral selfie or like the death selfies, which is seemingly pretty morbid. And it sounds like, based on what Candace is saying, that this is also happening on Snapchat, or injured close ones in the hospital. Yeah.
um
And
yeah,
then Eric had this when people get pulled over and take a selfie. Congrats.
that was literally me like last week.
Took a selfie of it, Owen?
Yes.
Oh no.
I got I wasn't doing anything bad, but I got my sticker was out of date and I didn't even know. And yeah, I got pulled and it was funny. I was on my way to let's see, get my headshots done at the student center. So I'm in my suit and I'm just like, but anyways, yeah, congrats to me. I got it, dismissed in court, thankfully. And but no, that's funny. And also, this is one from a few years ago where it was a Snapchat on campus, and there's me, and there's like a police truck or a police car back there, and basically I was walking to my class, and someone had was skateboarding, and they fell, and they were like on the floor, and I was like, someone like I was on the way to class, and I was like, someone got like pretty beat up, I guess, and there's like a fire truck and a cop car, and I'm just like, so I'm guilty as just as much as some of these people, but mind you, I did sense that they were kind of okay. So,
I like Alex's perspective here. I think if the selfie is taken at your own unfortunate expense, whatever. But the other ones are taken at other people's expense.
high school.
And this is awful. I don't know. I don't even have words. But what I do want to note is that your team does need to wrap this up within the next 5 minutes. So just make sure you're keeping that time.
Okay, perfect. Yeah. This was my article. It's kind of short, and let's see. Oh, okay. So then, just one quote from the article was that technological prostheses like smartphones affect the individuals who appropriate them. And I wanted to know if you agree with it, and if so, why or why not, or if you disagree. If let's see. Like, do you believe the smartphones are affecting the individuals who appropriate them, or do you think it's the individuals who are appropriating, smartphone culture?
That's a really good question. Can you pop it into the chat for us?
Yeah. Sorry, I'm just getting that.
No problem. Maybe Pierce can jump in, or Daniel, or both of you.
Yeah, I was thinking maybe Pierce can start the wrap up.
Smartphones. Oh my gosh.
Okay, Owen, I'm going to mute you and I'm going to let Pierce take it away and we'll have that conversation on the side and maybe jump back to it at the end.
All right, guys. So to conclude our live show on selfies, I want to wrap up with some key takeaways from both our featured articles. What does a selfie say that Wes spoke about? And if you didn't take a selfie, did you even vote, which Daniel spoke about? Together, these studies highlight the complex and sometimes surprising way that selfies shape our lives and our social landscapes. First, we looked at what does a selfie say? A recent news story that shed light on the hidden privacy risks of sharing selfies online. While selfies may feel like a harmless moment of self-expression, they often carry digital traces like geotags and metadata that can reveal intimate details of our lives from exact locations and personal habits. For instance, a travel influencer unknowingly shared her real-time whereabouts, exposing privacy risks many hadn't fully considered. This story underscores the urgent need for social media users to be mindful of the data embedded in their photos, as even seemingly minor details can be used by others to track or profile us. I found it's funny. I'm sure you guys see like some of the people on TikTok showing like when they're playing games to guess locations, and it's actually kind of crazy. They almost guess it every single time, so watch out for that. But then we examined if you didn't take a selfie, did you even vote? This article explored how selfies can also act as expressions of civic identity, especially during key events like Election Day. This study looked at I voted selfies on Twitter, noting how these images reflect different citizenship models. What the author called singularity and solidarity. Posting a voting selfie is an individual expression, but it's also part of a larger collective action, encouraging others to engage in civic duty. This act of blending personal expression with collective responsibility is a modern twist on traditional ideas of civic engagement, revealing how digital platforms enable us to share democratic actions in powerful new ways. Through these two articles, we see how selfies impact both personal and public realms. While they also allow us to document our lives and express ourselves, they also leave a digital footprint that can be used to profile and track us. Furthermore, selfies are a tool for civic expression, bridging personal identity and collective responsibility in new digital forms of engagement. So next time you share moments online, consider the digital traces you leave behind and the larger impact of your post. Use your digital presence wisely, whether it's to protect your privacy or to inspire positive social action. Thanks for joining us today, guys. Let's continue to be mindful of how we express ourselves in this digital age. Thanks, guys.
Thank you. Huge round of applause, Group 5. You are incredible. I'm really impressed with how this show came together. It was informative. You did such a great job unpacking those academic articles. You brought really interesting examples in throughout. There was really standing dialogue. So thank you to you for all of your hard work, all of your preparation that led to this moment of presentation. I think it was just outstanding, and I'm really proud of all of you. And I think this is an outstanding example of a fantastic LinkedIn show. So I really am very proud of you, and I just want to say, yay, well done, you're done. This is great. And I'll pass it over to Katie. Any thoughts or comments for this team?
Yeah, I echo everything that you said. It was very well done, very professional. I love being able to see you guys and to, you guys did a wonderful job with the comments, and also everyone that's in the comments and on LinkedIn right now. Y'all did a fantastic job as well of interacting with Team 5 and giving them really good dialogue to go off of. Your wrap up was fantastic. Everything, you docked all the points off, all the marks, you checked them off. And that was a really wonderful wrap up and call to action. So well done. You guys should be proud. This is a really great example of a social media show on LinkedIn. So well done.
Yeah, you've set the bar really high for next week and the week after. I know Katie and I have been dying, so excited to get back onto LinkedIn. And you really set the tone for an outstanding show for the next few weeks as well. So thank you so much for everything you've done. And thank you. Yeah, I want to echo what Katie said. Thank you to those in the audience, because I think they really brought the comments. in such a fantastic way that allowed us to build off of it. So thank you for that. Have a wonderful day. We'll be on Zoom on Monday, back on LinkedIn on Wednesday, and have a wonderful day. Bye, everyone.